So The Smashing Machine was directed by Benny Safdie and it stars Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. And Dwayne Johnson stars as one of the pioneers of UFC fighting, Mark Kerr, as he tries to become one of the best in one of these new sports such. And he develops a lot of issues, a lot of problems with his life, including issues with his wife, played by Emily Blunt. And we have a new movie. So this is a movie I've been hearing a lot about. It was like one of those movies that it's like, I'm surprised Dwayne Johnson would do something like this. Obviously, Dwayne Johnson started off in wrestling, and eventually he kind of moved to movies and such. He kind of does all these like, fun popcorn-esque movies, Fast and Furious and such. But I was kind of surprised that he would do a movie from A24. Emily Blunt, not really surprising, but Dwayne Johnson, yes, definitely surprising. And it was from one of the Safdie brothers. I do like their work. I like Uncut Gems. No, I like Good Time. I love Uncut Gems. And so I was curious to see like what one of them would do behind the camera by himself. And we also have Josh Safdie doing Marty Supreme later this year with Timothy Chalamet and also from A24. So I was curious to see what this movie was going to be like. And honestly, the best way to describe this movie is that it's fine. It's not amazing. I'm not mind blown. I don't hate this movie by any means, but I also just feel like this movie could have been something more, and it clearly wants to be something more, but there's something holding it back. So let's start off with the things I do like about this movie. First off, I do admittedly like the performances of Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. Dwayne Johnson is really trying to do a lot in this movie. You can definitely tell that he's very passionate about this movie and very passionate about Mark Kerr's life and such, and I think that's very commendable, and you can definitely tell that he's trying to give a good performance. Emily Blunt is also really not necessarily great. I would actually say her performance is fine, but it's just her character's not very well written, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But I do like their scenes. I do like their scenes together. They have a lot of chemistry. You can definitely tell that there's some bond between the two. And also, I do really like the fight scenes in this movie. They're very intense. They're very graphic at times. But also, even the sound design of some of these fight scenes is, like, very well done. Like, there are times where it's, like, you can just hear bones crunching. It's like, oh, I kind of, like, went back in my seat a little bit. I'm like, okay, that's actually a lot for that moment. It's like, you can definitely feel the pain that Mark is going through in this movie. And I do think the movie is actually very well shot in the sense that it's, like, the movie takes place in, like, the 90s and the 2000s. It's like, okay, it actually kind of looks like it's actually from that era a little bit. I feel like it's actually kind of more reminiscent of like, movies that kind of like took place in that time period. So it's like, I actually kind of appreciate it for that. And also I do think the movie at least has something to say about men and how they deal with emotions and such and how they deal with their issues, kind of like how their emotions are kind of bottled up, but like when the moment is wrong, it kind of just explodes. It actually does do that very well. I do feel like that's very interesting to talk about, especially with a movie like this. But let's talk about some of the things I don't really like about this movie. First off, even though Emily Blunt admittedly gives a good performance, I felt like her character was not really that well written. I feel like I've seen her character before in a lot of other movies, and it actually hurts because she's actually playing a real life person. She's playing Mark's wife at some point. And I feel like this movie doesn't really do her any favors, unfortunately, with her character. I feel like she's not really doing anything new. I thought to myself after watching this movie, or I should say, while watching the movie, I'm like, there's a character on SNL where it's like she's the boxer's girlfriend from every movie about boxing or something like that. And I'm like, Emily Blunt kind of reminds me of this character. At least on SNL, I can at least laugh at the tropes and such, but it's like this movie is just following the tropes, and I just felt like it was just not very interesting. I would say this movie does have a lot of cliches. It's very predictable at times. There's actually a moment towards the end of the movie where it's like, okay, I thought this was going to go in one direction. I was like, oh, it actually doesn't go in that direction. That was the only time where it's like, okay, at least you didn't just follow the formula. Where I feel like there's a lot of moments in this movie where it's like, you're just following the formula. And it just also becomes very repetitive at times, which I won't get into. It's like, fighting both, in the ring and also just off the ring with Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt, like how they're verbally arguing and such. It just becomes very repetitive at times. And I would say for this movie, everything is just fine. It's just okay. Like, I feel like this is a movie that clearly wants to be more than just okay. It wants to be one of those, greatest of all times. It wants to be one of the best movies of the year. But there's just something about it that's just holding me back, and I couldn't figure out, like, what the issue was exactly. It's like, but I realize it's kind of more, everything about this movie kind of feels like it's already been done before. And I just feel like at least Dwayne Johnson is at least trying to give a good performance. At least Emily Blunt is trying to give a good performance. At least the fight scenes are pretty cool. But everything else about this movie feels fine. I wasn't like mind blown by this movie by any means. But I also wouldn't say I hated this movie. And I feel like it's just settles in this camp where it's like everything is just okay. But it also kind of makes me a little nervous about Marty Supreme, because obviously, if you know the Safdie brothers, they work on their films together, and Uncut Gems was their last movie that they worked on together. So now they're working on two separate projects that are very different, and I'd be very curious to see what Marty Supreme is like. Is it not going to be as good as, Good Time or Uncut Gems, or is it going to be as good as something like this? So I kind of am worried about their careers. It kind of reminds me of the Coen brothers right now, where it's like they did so well together, and now I'm worried that since they're separated, they just make movies that are very similar but very different. So, the Smashing Machine, I will say the performances are pretty good, particularly from Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. The fight scenes are really good, especially the sound design in those scenes are very intense. It is gorgeously shot. The themes are very interesting. It does take a few turns with the story here and there, but it doesn't save the fact that, there are predictable moments in this movie. There are very predictable moments you've seen in like all these other true life stories where it's like, this is what this person went through, and this is kind of things to go through, and it just also becomes very repetitive at times, especially with fighting, and then Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt's fighting itself. And also, I would say everything is just fine, but clearly this movie wants to be better than it actually is. So I'll give the Smashing Machine 2.5 out of 4 stars. Stream it. So, what is your favorite Dwayne Johnson movie? Comment down below, subscribe to the channel. This is Pat, and stay safe.